Hey everybody, how are you doing today? Shane with No Limits Aviation here at KCOE Airport in Coeur d'Alene. I haven't done too many videos on this type of a subject, but yesterday we had a big meeting here at the airport regarding somebody coming in to bring in a terminal for potential commercial aviation off of the airport. So I thought I would kind of touch bases on what I thought happened, how I thought that went last night for Avports and Stancraft and all the people that were involved, as well as kind of my take and concerns that I have from there. So I think they put on a phenomenal show last night. I think it was great. Avports had great food and drinks for everybody there that showed up to Stancraft for their explanation of what was going on. Some of the things that stood out to me pretty quickly was we stood around for about an hour and a half before anybody from Avports actually came downstairs to talk to the general public or the people that they invited to do that. I'm sure they were busy. I know they were doing news interviews and other things, so that's, it was out there kind of doing those types of things. They got up, the owner of Stancraft, Rob Bloom, got up and introduced them. Seems like they are very familiar with each other, so I think they've probably been working together on some of this, trying to get through that. So, that was great. I think that would be a good partnership between those. Some of the takeaways that I've got, it seemed like a lot of the people that were there were airport end users, which I love to see. Most of you guys know, anybody that knows me personally or hears me talk about the airports, I think it's very, very important that we get end users involved in the decision making that's going on at this airport. So with that, we kind of went, they got up and talked about what they were doing and why they were doing it. They said they've been looking at this market for quite some time. Of course, that's probably pretty true. A lot of people look at the Coeur d'Alene, North Idaho markets for a lot of different types of things. It's blowing up, as we all know. So I think that made a lot of sense. They said their market research says that we are ripe for a airline to come in here. Maybe we are, maybe we aren't. I know it's been tried before, but as some of the people pointed out, I know that Stephen, the airport managers, pointed out, as well as other people, timing's kind of everything. So maybe we are ripe for that. I know, in just kind of touching on some of this, and I'll go into some of this deeper, we have an airport, an international airport, about 45 minutes away, Spokane, that is not at capacity, that probably isn't anywhere near capacity. I think they're building another add-on terminal. Either they've started or they're starting. What does that look like? I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs. I've seen it around the country when an airport that doesn't have all of the infrastructure built tries to do that, and in a smaller air carrier tries to come in. Typically what will happen is the air carriers that are existing and established in there will cut their prices to drive everybody out. But maybe that doesn't happen. Again, that's what I've seen. That doesn't always mean that's how it goes down. So they kind of went in and talking about, that they've been here for about a year, I guess, talking about this. It sounds like they've talked to people around the airport. It was apparent that they didn't talk to many end users of the airport. Maybe one or two companies that are doing business and or users of the airport, it seemed like. Everybody else was kind of caught off guard. Most of us didn't know about this until the lease went in front of the county commissioners. What was that, a couple weeks ago, I think now, somewhere like that. So it went in front of the county commissioners to get voted on for their lease to go from there. Some red flags were drawn there. We needed some more information, and then it kind of proceeded from there. So they in their good faith, they came up here, have spent some time here. It seems like they're talking with some people around the airport, and trying to smooth things over and move forward. Now, my understanding, and then this is not my research, this is other people's research, but and I think it was brought up last night, wasn't it brought up on who they were associated with? Goldman Sachs?
Goldman Sachs.
Is that right? So they were associated with Goldman Sachs financially, so I think that's where the money backing is, so that's great. I think they have the money. And then, to build what they're calling, should I say, temporary facility. Now we know in aviation and kind of how this works that temporary facilities like that can be there for a long period of time. Not always, but it can be there for a long period of time. There's some airports around that have temporary facilities like that have been there for 20 plus years. So if it was to work out financially and they invested the money for that location, it would be interesting to watch that and see that grow. Now, some of the things that were brought up was, who's coming? Nobody really knows who's coming here, and rightfully so. If you're making a deal like that, you don't want to let the cat out of the bag on who you're negotiating with, so that makes sense. I could see that. The other things were, location on the airport. Now, I had brought up, I asked them if any of them were pilots. One of the gentlemen, I apologize, I forget everybody's name, but one of the gentlemen, does anybody remember his name?
VP.
It was the VP, I think, of the company. Was a private pilot, so I think that was good. He'd flown around California a little bit. So I said, okay, great. What I'd like to ask him is how many airports had he been to that were what I'm going to call mixed use. And for the people that don't fly or don't go around airports a lot, mixed use, I'm going to say, is commercial airline operations as well as general aviation. Now, historically, people are going to say Coeur d'Alene, there's been a lot of private jets coming in and out of here, as well as the water bombers and fire bombers during the summer, which is true. Probably not as many jets as a lot of airports around, but we do have some of those.
From a case study basis, do you know any airports in the U.S. that have done something similar to what Avports is proposing? And if so, what were the results of that?
Oh, I think that there's definitely been some, there's been airports that have done this. I'm not going to say it's good, bad, or indifferent. If you want me to give you a call? Okay, all right. Finish this up. Yeah, no, you're good. I'll give you a call. I don't think it's going to be a big issue on bringing an airliner in, and I'm all for it. If there are people here and the flights went to the right places and were cheap enough, I'm going to use them. We're all going to use them, right? It's not saying that nobody's going to use this airport. I think it will. Some of the concerns that I had would be, one, location, okay? The proposed location of the airport, and I don't know how this came about. There's a couple concerns here, what I would say locally. One, they had a piece of property at the airport. My understanding, this didn't involve me, but my understanding of that piece of property was that it had been broken up into 6 different parcels and that there was tentative 6 private GA hangars destined to be put onto that lot. We've got a huge waiting list for GA hangars at this airport. I thought that was great. I know 3 of the people that had that. Now, my understanding is that those leases were never executed. Probably because we've got the potential like Avport coming in to do this. But some of the concerns that I did have, and I did bring up last night at the meeting, were the location on that airport is historically what I would say a GA or general aviation side of the airport, which is a small airplane side airport. Of course, people are going to say Hagedon has their jet on that side. That is true. There's a couple other jets on that side, but predominantly they're not flying all the time, and predominantly that side of the airport is for general aviation. Now we have a north side of the airport where Standcraft is. There's a lot of open land over there. I know Standcraft has a lot of area over there that definitely is more conducive to large jets. Of course, Standcraft caters to those types of aircraft, so they're going over there. The runway that's used by those jets predominantly is 624, which is on that side of the airport as well. So to put a commercial airline, and they're proposing, or they anticipate having somewhere between 13 and 15 flights a day, is what I was told. That's a lot of flights. That is a lot of flights in and out of here. on a GA side that we've got flight schools and we've got small airplanes, and we're in northern Idaho, so we have tube and fabric airplanes and tail wheel airplanes, and kind of everything else. Over there, there's some other concerns, jet blast and things like that we need to worry about. So I brought that up. I'm getting this isn't a dig at them, but I felt that I was getting the vanilla answer of, we want to work with everybody, we're going to work with everybody, we're going to communicate with everybody, and it won't be a problem. And very well it may not be. Maybe they've got some things in place that none of us are seeing that are going to be a fix for those. But I do have a concern of, if you've got a 737 or an A320, 90 degrees to a taxiway that a tail wheel aircraft that weighs 1,000 pounds is taxiing down, even in an idle, the thrust created off of that as that airplane's backing up potentially could cause havoc on airplanes. Some of the other things that they brought up is, financing. That was kind of a big thing there. Of course, they're paying for their facility. They threw out the number $10 to $20 million investment on that facility. That's great. I imagine they're going to invest in the parking lot on the other side of the street as well. That's great. That's going to come out of that $10 or $20 million. But they didn't not say that they're not going to be looking for FAA grant money for some of the improvements. So maybe, and I don't know what the taxiway is rated for, but there's a potential for taxiway Alpha to be, excuse me, to need some improvements for those types of aircraft and that much weight. That would be FAA grant money. It would be money that we, as an airport or a county or an end user, would apply for, and we would get. With that would be strings attached. Not being able to shut down the airport for so long, keeping it, those types of things. Pretty common. We get money every year from the FAA. Most of our capital improvement projects are FAA money, so that's pretty normal. But what they didn't talk about, and was brought up a little bit, is the off-site infrastructure improvements. So where they're proposing to put it with 10 to 12, flights a day in and out of here. If you figure even they're at half capacity at 100 people a flight, you're talking 1,000, 1,500 people on an airplane. So you're talking, let's say there's 2 people per car per airplane, 700, 800 cars a day coming in and out of this airport. The only way to where that's at on this airport is through residential areas. There's no thoroughfare, there's no highway, there's no expressway, there's no anything to get in. The closest highway would be Highway 95, but you've got to come through neighborhoods to get there. Those neighborhoods are not set up for that kind of traffic, period. So there's going to be county money needing to be invested to improve those roads. Is that made up by the fees and the tax revenue and all the other things that the county potentially could get off of an airline coming here? Some of it could be offset, but we're going to have an initial cost to address all those types of things. So we go back to location. Does that location make the most sense?
What effect would a terminal have on the accessibility for GA type people looking to get into aviation?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I know there was a news article that was done. I think Crem did it. Throw a shout out to Crem. They've done a lot of stuff for us before in the past. I think that's great. The big thing that I would say is a concern is it was brought up by our airport manager that the community does not have access to this airport currently. I would argue that. So I am the community. I'm an end user of this airport. We give many charitable flights to people from the community to introduce them to aviation, to introduce them to this airport, introduce them to flying and flight. All of our flight instructors do those donations. What's that?
Saturday.
Oh yeah, we have a Saturday high school program that has 180 some kids enrolled in it, that we've got families coming out from homeschool families to the high school, Coeur d'Alene, all of the local high schools around. I think we've got kids coming from about 30 different high schools all the way over into Spokane, and private stuff. So I would say, one, they have access to it. That access with a terminal doesn't change that. They're not able to just walk around this airport. You can't walk around basically any federally funded airport that's a public use airport because of security reasons, for lack of better explanation. So we have a terminal. You're going to have about the same amount of access there as you do have access to Spokane or an LAX or a Teterboro or any of those. You're going to go into a building and they're going to usher you onto an airplane. You're not going to be able to come and check out facilities any different than you are now. You can come in here, we could show you airplanes and walk you around and give you a tour of the airport anytime you want it. So I kind of thought that was an interesting comment by our airport manager on that. So a couple other things on those notes is I thought it was kind of interesting as we went through this. One, how they heard about how a company that's based primarily at larger airports kind of heard about Coeur d'Alene and went from there. Maybe it's an influx of people. We know a couple of us ran into one of the representatives that was there last night downtown over the summer, and I think at the time he was in talks with Steven, the airport manager, about coming up here and doing that. I think he was pretty excited. It's kind of a really cool, neat area. But where did the knowledge of and where did that make sense? Is any of this have to do with the people at the airport that are trying to fight the Part 139 certificate and what that costs and what it adds to the community and taxpayers? Maybe. Something else that I thought was kind of interesting that I don't know if ever was brought up is Steven, our airport manager. I guess they call him an airport director here. Actually, if you look on his LinkedIn profile, from 2008 to 2010, actually worked for Avports. So he worked for the company that he's championing to bring a terminal to this airport. That's kind of I don't know, it could be construed a couple different ways. Maybe it's just good because he's got a good working relationship with them, because he knows them, and it worked for him in the past, or something else. I don't know. But I think that definitely has some from negotiating and kind of what it looks like. We might need, somebody else to look at that. Maybe we don't. We've got some great board of county commissioners right now. I think they'll definitely look at all of the potential effects of that and kind of moving forward. But I'm all for a terminal here if we think we can make it happen. I just think it probably makes a lot more sense on the north side of the airport. Stancraft has a wonderful facility. If they wanted to spend a bunch of money and invest, maybe they are good at providing services. They do that at other airports around the country. Maybe doing those services, say kind of very similar to what Stancraft provide now. Maybe it's worth them looking at purchasing Stancraft and utilizing that for a terminal to see if it works. We could have to see what that looks like, but kind of going from there. So what other questions do we get called about, Anthony, or have people were asking us? So we've got a couple questions that some of you guys have asked me, or texted me, or messaged me. So I'm trying to figure out if there's anything that I left out. I've got Anthony's on the video here. I got Eric sitting across from me. We're just trying to answer some of this stuff here. You guys have any questions for me that just answering that might make some sense, or some of the community might want to know?
I mean, the only thing that I can really think of is just going back to what sort of airports have done the same thing and what have the results been of that, because if you look at it from a case study standpoint, you can kind of see if we're going to repeat history somewhere, if it's going to work, if it's not going to work. There's a lot of big claims that were made by them.
I think the only time's going to tell. I mean, spending time in San Diego, there's a great example. San Diego International is overgrown. It's outgrown. It's what it has. It's got one single runway. There's no more land around downtown San Diego. They're struggling to loosen up some operations there. So they're about 30 miles north. There's a small town called Carlsbad that has a beautiful airport, very big. I know they went in there and they spent, tens of millions of dollars to build a terminal there. It's a beautiful terminal. It's a beautiful airport. just about everybody under the sun has went in there to try to run a commuter airline out of there, and nobody's made it. And I think the longest running commuter airline there is about a year. I read an article the other day talking about the cost of our commuter airline pilots. Most of those guys have renegotiated their contracts in the last year and have gotten huge raises, double what they were getting. Well, what we're seeing with that is on these airports that have inexpensive flights going somewhere, they're pulling out of those airports because they can't afford to pay what it costs. You can't fly from here to Vegas, but I don't think Vegas was one of their things. I think they were like here to Seattle, which Spokane covers that pretty well. Here to Portland, again, Spokane covers that fairly well. And then Boise. Here to Boise. Now, Boise, I don't know if there's directs. I think there's a Southwest runs Spokane, Boise, but maybe that's a good one. And I know a lot of people come here and ask us for charter flights. We've had a handful of people ask us about Boise flights, so maybe that one, kind of makes sense. But if you can't afford to run the line, they'll pull the line. That's just kind of how that works. So, what does that look like if we have a building? That was kind of brought up last night in general. I'm sure they're going to build a beautiful facility. It doesn't look like, when I go on the website, nothing that they've got any of the airports was half-assed, excuse my language, but it wasn't half-assed. So I don't imagine they're going to half-ass anything here. They're going to run out of room here where they're proposing it. And again, they're going to probably have some difficulty with location and keeping everybody happy, especially that we don't have a terminal here at this airport. That's kind of the other big thing that definitely should be brought up and talked about, kind of going from there.
Do you think a 135 operation would be more suited for something along this size of an airport, or?
It's hard to say. We've got, if a 135 operator was going to do well, then, it's so small on a 135 is more private charter stuff. Who knows? I will say this, when we go back to commuter airlines, and I don't know the parties involved, but I will say Empire Airlines is based here at this airport, has been here at this airport, has ran airlines in Hawaii, and has other types of airline stuff. You would think, because it's their wheelhouse and in their home base, that if they thought that there was money to be made, they have airplanes sitting down on the ramp they're paying storage for. If they thought there was money to be made running people from here to Boise in a Embry, 175 or an ATR, I would imagine those airplanes would be fueled up, gassed up, and there would be people over there loading up, and they would be flying back and forth to Boise. Now, again, I'm not a smart guy. I don't know. I'm learning as everybody else is kind of going around that, but that kind of makes sense to me. Of Empire Air's been here 30 plus years, I think, on this airport. Wouldn't they do it? I mean, they have the airplanes, they have the infrastructure already. They don't have to invest 10 or $20 million. They're on the north end of the airport already. I think it would be a win-win for them, and it doesn't seem like their market research is probably showing something different than Avports, or there's underlying motivation on that. So, that's kind of what I've got for everybody. That was my take on what happened. Again, all the guys were great. After kind of their Q&A session, they came down, we shook hands, we talked about a lot, a couple different things. Me and Anthony and Eric and Don was there too. I'm not trying to knock on them. I think it could be very good for the airport if it works. I just think they really should look at the locations around the airport and kind of what's going to make best sense now and moving into the future for those types of things. So I want you guys to check out this video. We're going to start doing more videos like this. We're going to get more one-on-one with me and Eric and Anthony here. It won't always be about the airport, but I think this one's kind of important. There's a lot of you guys out there that may have questions. If you do, put it in the comments. Anthony will get it to me, and we could do another video answering some of your other questions than the ones we've got already. So thanks for hanging out. You guys have a great evening. Later.